Today on our 2007 Jeep Liberty, we'll be installing the Blue Ox base plate, part number BX1122. To begin with, you will need to raise the hood of the vehicle. Next, we'll need to remove the grille. In this case, we were able to lift up the tabs, one on top of each of the headlights, as well as 4 tabs through the middle that need to be unclipped. And then as you pull the grille towards the front of the vehicle and out, it'll lift off. With the grille out of the way, we need to remove 2 bolts that are just below the headlights that are 10mm bolts. We need to remove both of these as they help hold the lower bumper fascia in place. With each of these removed, one on each side, now we need to go into the fender well. We'll need to remove 2 Christmas tree push pins that are located on the inner fender well section shown here. To remove these, a flathead screwdriver works well to pry out the center section, then you can remove the whole pin. Now that you have both of these removed from the inner fender well, you need to scoot in a little farther on the inner fender well, and there's a single Christmas tree push pin on the lower edge of the wheel well, just forward of both of the tires. Again, one on each side. Next, we will need to remove the 2 10mm bolts that are on the bottom edge of the fascia, just below the radiator support. These 2 bolts are located here. You'll need to go just behind the blinker light on the front bumper or fascia area, up near the fender flare. You'll need to release the tab here to allow the front bumper or fascia to be removed. You'll need to do this on both sides. Be careful not to break the tab, but a small flathead screwdriver will help aid you in removing this tab. With that done, as you're pulling it out, you need to be sure that you disconnect both the lower blinker light as well as the upper blinker light on each side. It's a good idea to go ahead and get an extra set of hands. In this case, we found it easier just to twist the light out of the housing, keeping the bulb intact. Now that we have this done on both sides, we'll go ahead and use a small flathead screwdriver and push the tabs out as we're pulling the fascia out from the center section. Now as you're doing this, you'll be able to completely remove the front fascia or bumper off the vehicle. Next, we'll need to use a 10mm socket to remove the bolt that holds each of the hubs in place, as shown here. Just set both of these aside for now and we'll reinstall them later. Next, we'll go ahead and insert the 2 backing plates into the holes that the hubs that we just removed covered up. As you will notice, underneath each of the holes, there is 2 holes that will line up with the base plate. You will also notice that on the backing plate, the holes are a little offset. You want to put the more offset side towards the center of the vehicle, as it'll allow the holes to line up a little easier. Go ahead and insert the nut plates followed by a 3/8 hex bolt, a lock washer, and a flat washer. Also note that it is required that you use red Loctite on all bolts before tightening. While having someone hold the base plate up into position, we will first begin by installing the 4 bolts in the holes that are already on the vehicle. To do this, we will use the backing plate which we just installed, 4 of the nut plates, the 4 longer 3/8 hex bolts, 4 flat washers, and 4 lock washers. Once we've repeated this process for all 4, we'll go ahead and torque them down to the manufacturer's specifications. Also be sure to torque the bolts to the torque chart given in the instructions. Once we have these 4 bolts torqued, we'll need to get a 13/32 drill bit and drill out the 3rd hole on the base plate as shown here. We'll need to repeat this process for both the driver and the passenger side. On each of these locations, we'll use the shorter 3/8 hex nut and a lock washer. They will be threaded into a nut plate. Now that you have the holes drilled, you need to bend the arm on the nut plate to allow it to slip into position. With that held into position, go ahead and put a little red Loctite on your 3/8 hex bolt along with your lock washer. Now you may need to adjust it a little as you're putting the bolt in so that it threads properly into the nut plate. Once you have it in and tightened down, go ahead and torque it to the manufacturer's specification. Now go ahead and repeat the same process for the other side. Now that we have all the hardware torqued to the manufacturer's specifications, we can go ahead and snip off the excess of the nut plate. In this case, we use a set of tin snips by squeezing it and just bending back and forth a little bit, and they'll break off. Next, we'll go ahead and reinstall the hubs using the 10mm socket that we removed earlier, and go ahead and tighten these down as well. Now before we put the front fascia back on, we're going to go ahead and install the permanent base plate safety cables. To do this, you will need to go around the base plate as well as the cross member or the frame of the towed vehicle. As you will see here, on the driver's side, we had to scoot the safety cable towards the inside a little bit to avoid a cooling unit. You also want to make sure that you're not crushing any lines that may be behind it. With the safety cable wrapped around, we used a quick link to connect the ends and tighten them down. Now that we have both of our safety cables installed, now we're ready to put the front fascia back on. It's a good idea to get an extra set of hands here again to help you do that. Before you put it all the way in place, be sure that you put both of the lights that were removed from each side back into place and make sure that they're locked fully into position. With that done, we'll go ahead and push the tabs in on the top of the fascia, just above where the bumper would be, and help lock it into place. Next, we'll go ahead and reinstall the bolt with the 10mm socket just below the headlight that we removed earlier. Now we're ready to go under the vehicle and put the other two bolts that we removed earlier, again with the 10mm socket that holds the lower fascia in place. Finally, we need to go ahead and put the 3 Christmas tree push pins, 3 in each fender well that we removed, 2 along the outer edge and 1 towards the center on the bottom. Once you have that done, we're ready to put the grill back into place. If you set the bottom in, the tabs will line up, and as you push towards the top, each of the tabs will lock into place. Be careful not to push too hard as you can break them. Finally, push the top 2 tabs, 1 on each side, over the headlight. The final step we need to do is put the 2 arms that go into the base plate. These 2 arms that have a quick connect that lock it into place are what you use to connect to your tow bar and connect your vehicle to the tow vehicle. To put them in, you will line up the tab and twist it, and you'll hear it lock into place. The little ring will snap into place, securely locking the pin there. And with that, that'll complete the installation of the Blue Ox base plate, part number BX1122 on our 2007 Jeep Liberty.